please subscribe to the Berkshire Heroes channel. Have you clicked that button yet? Pressed it? Thank you so much. Now on with the show. I'm Laura Blumenthal on the Berkshire Heroes podcast, and today with me is Kris Lund, who is the Vice President of the Reading University Conservative Society, also a University of Reading student, of course. Welcome, Kris.
Hello, pleasure being here.
Thank you for chatting to me today, because I know you've been doing exciting things on campus. You've been setting up stalls and welcoming students to have debates with you, if it's on political issues, current affairs, under the banner of Talk to a Tory. So tell me, what made you decide to start this up, and what's been your experience?
Well, it's a bit naff. I remember when Charlie Kirk was shot. I remember watching that, and I'm going, someone needs to go around and talk to people, because when communication stops, when communication breaks down, bad things happen. So that was a big part of it, and I met the president in a pub in Windsor, completely by accident, and we started talking about this idea of Talk to a Tory, and we ended up getting really both quite excited about it, and it just we spent ages fighting with the university, but thank goodness we've now got it through, and we've spent 24 hours outside of campus now, talking to students, talking about their problems, talking about what sort of things interest them, why they are of certain political persuasions, breaking down the barrier, because I'm sure that many people are aware that the Tories are viewed as looking as though from their ivory tower, a bit out of touch. So I was trying to make us more in touch. That was a big part of it, and I've always been quite into politics since Brexit. So that was a big part of it as well.
And what are people talking to you about? Is it current affairs? Is it sort of student fees? Is it really emotive issues? And how are they with you? Are they rude? Are they civil? Has it got a bit punchy at times?
Well, I'm really happy that this is one of the most common questions, but the most common question I hear is, what can the Tories do for me? I think that is a very mature question for students to be asking, and I'm quite glad that's one of the big things. The second most common thing is, sadly, 14 years, why don't you guys just go to your grave? So we typically have quite a long conversation on what do you mean by 14 years, because people keep saying 14 years, and we go, okay, well, we've had elections in the middle of those 14 years, and everyone seemed very, very happy with the way we were running things. When people say 14 years, we end up negotiating it down to 40 days of a budget that went wrong.
So when students come up to you and say, what can the Conservatives do for students? If it's teenagers, if it's those who are studying, not really begun their career yet, what is it that you say to them?
One of the first things I ask them is, do you have a job? Because obviously that is make a big difference in what kind of student I'm talking to. If they say yes, I go, well, how do you get to work? And they go, well, I take the bus. I take the 20 or the 21 into town, and then I take. I mean, for an example, I used to take the 4 into Wokingham, but a lot of people, they would take the 21 into Lower Early. They take the bus to work, and I'd say, okay, how much did you pay for your bus when you started university? And they go, well, it would be about £2 a ride. It was capped by the government. I go, right, how much do you pay now? And they go, £3.50. And I go, do you know that Reading Council are thinking about making it £4.50 for a bus journey? And they go, wow, that's outrageous. And I go, yes, because we're a party that believes strongly in getting people into work as cheaply and as affordably as possible. And a big part of that is making sure people who can't necessarily afford their first car yet, or can't actually drive yet because of a list of reasons, they have access to transport, reliable transport, something like Reading buses, something like Thames Valley, something like Carousel. They're very, very important. Or if I talk to students who don't necessarily have a job, we will talk about, okay, so do you rely on student finance? And they go, yes, I rely on student finance. And I go, well, do you have do you realise how much debt are you going in? And they go, yes, it's about 6% interest a year. And I ask them, usually I'm talking to a Green, and they say, well, what's the Greens plan for dealing with your student loan interest? And then they go, do you know what? Actually, I don't know. And they go, well, they want to get rid of it. And they say, that's good, right? And I say, absolutely. How much would that cost? And they go, I haven't got a clue. And they go, far too much. Listen to Zach Polanski talk about it, and you will see that he hasn't got a clue either. Versus, we've got a plan to get rid, especially on Plan 2 student loans, to get rid of the top half of the interest, make it based on inflation alone, to try and ease students actually paying that back, because what will end up happening is you'll be paying into your debt for 30 years and you'd actually have more debt than when you started. And students are going, wow, this is really bad. Weren't you guys the government that brought it in? And I go, it's a little bit more complicated. Back then we'd have a lovely conversation about it. Sometimes 20, 30 minutes. I'd end up having 10 or 20 students crowding round. We'd have a lovely conversation about debt interest in the in the national debt interest as well as student debt interest. And that's a big thing that is concerning a lot of them, is will I ever be able to pay back my loans?
Kris, do you think we've lost the art of disagreeing with each other in a civil way? Have you seen people just see the Conservative banner and think, I just want to have an argument here. I don't actually want to persuade someone or be persuaded myself and hear the other side?
To an extent. That's the big thing, because I am seeing an awful lot of people going into this going, oh, the Conservatives suck. The Conservatives were awful. The Conservatives, 14 years of power, they've ruined the country, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to go vote someone else, and I'll never vote Conservative. They deserve to go in their grave. And I talk to a lot of them, and come the end of this conversation, I find a good chunk of them going, do you know what? I know you're running in the local elections. I'm going to register to vote. I'm going to vote you. I'm going to vote Conservative, because these people aren't helping me, but you actually seem like you give a damn. A big part of students getting in politics is they're looking at politics and they're going, they don't care about me. And a big part of now is I'm trying to emphasise to students that, hey, actually, we kind of do. Unfortunately, though, we are seeing a quite disturbing rise in societies on campus being incredibly hostile. The Autistic Society, for an example, put out an apology saying, we apologise for saying please don't harass the Tories. The LGBTs, we've heard that they are planning protests, same thing with the communists, to try and shut our society down, which is quite sad. Considering
On
my
what
brother,
grounds? What criticisms do they have?
they're not exactly making it clear. Is it the LGBT and the autistic say it's because we're transphobic and homophobic, and when I told my gay brother that, he giggled. And
So we're the party that brought in gay marriage
that's the
and have
one.
brought in so many things to protect people and speed up eradicating HIV
That's the one. That's the
infections in
party.
this
Yeah.
country. That's astonishing. Do you think this is just an education point, that the Conservatives themselves just haven't been very good at communicating what it is that they do for people, they do for students, they help particular communities, and actually people have been captured, if it's online or in the media, just sometimes just complete lies and
Hmm.
prejudices. And if they actually research the facts, that they would be very surprised. And this is some of the good work that you're doing by having your stall and speaking to people.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. It's it's incredibly funny. I do giggle whenever people tell me, "Oh, you're the homophobic party." I'm going, well, we legalised gay marriage. We pushed for that quite heavily. Yes, we have a lot of very socially conservative members of parliament and ex-members of parliament. We're a very, very broad church, and a lot of people, they take the minority in the broad church, someone like Mr. Rees-Mogg, who in a couple of weeks I'll have the pleasure of talking to. who's very much against gay marriage and things like that, and they'll plaster it on the entire party. When you'll have someone like Theresa May and David Cameron, who were some of the pioneers in getting gay marriage not just as an institutional thing, but making it something a part of everyday life. Just when I walk into to gay people and they're married, it's just life. People no longer really notice, oh, it's two gay married people. It's two married people, which I'm quite glad about. I'm ecstatic that under our administration, we helped normalise homosexuality, and I think a big part of it is the fact that we are not very good at advertising what not very good at advertising what we do for people, which is sad. But I mean, it's better to be humble. I mean,
Yes, I had a charity from Slough on this podcast and interviewing them with the work they do supporting gay and trans people. And of course, they faced so many horrendous issues that are just not being talked about in the media. But at the same time, parties like the Conservative, a lot of it is run by gay people. You go to a conference, you go to any LGBT Tory event, you see how influential gay people are and listened to, and are MPs and peers and are highly influential. And I think maybe the party just has to do a better job in promoting and publicising all of that. But it's a shame when particular societies can't simply disagree and are willing to just try to shut people down, and be driven by real hate, which is really disappointing. I wondered, Kris, personally, what attracted you to politics and debate?
I'd always been a fan of arguing when I was younger. Brexit was a big one as well. My dad's an EU national, um, and my granddad on my mum's side was a staunch Brexiteer. So conversations at home were great fun. But that was a big part of it, and it was kind of forced on you at school as well. I remember in school, was it in classrooms and in form time, we would be talking about politics. This was the time when President Trump was elected the first time. This was obviously the Brexit referendum and people like Boris Johnson getting a lot of press, and unfortunately now the Nigel Farage getting a lot of press. This was when people started really talking about it in classrooms, and you were ostracised if you voiced anything other than Jeremy Corbyn is a saint.
At
And we
school?
should at school.
Oh my gosh. What, by
It
the
was outrageous
teachers
by the
or your
teachers,
classmates?
both.
Well, oh my
That was a
goodness.
big part of
Ooh.
why I got into politics. Was all of my teachers would say I had no fear and just saying no, I think you're wrong. Um, I remember when I was doing Inspector Course in English literature for GCSE, they were saying how the capitalist is the bad guy. And I said, well, I don't actually disagree with what he did. I probably would have done something similar. Um, he made a point. Yes, some of the things that was done was a little bit dodgy, but ultimately, I don't think he was wrong. And I was told, I was pulled aside and I was reminded, probably don't write that in the exam, because you would probably lose marks for it.
Oh,
I
interesting.
appreciate the advice, but it's a shame that that advice is needed.
Of course. It's all very worrying, isn't it? I mean, I do think schools should be politics-free zones, really. I do think
Yeah.
there needs to be a lot more education when it comes to economics, especially, which seems to be completely empty from everyone's education at school. Um, but that's really disappointing and depressing. And Brexit became so toxic so quickly in such a surprising way. I
Mm.
think most people were really quite shocked, considering it should just be a pretty much a these are the facts, vote how you want, and people just went so extreme in painting the other side as evil and awful. And I I
It
don't
was
know
very
really why that
dramatic.
mania took over from us, but that mania has definitely shapeshifted in different ways on different topics since then as well. But I
Mm.
think everyone feels, whatever their political persuasion, that Brexit has changed things in this country, or how people reacted to it and what they got away with. And it's definitely very worrying. And I wondered, for your generation, do you feel as if social media has been a good thing in getting young people engaged in politics and listening to different opinions? Or do you feel as if it's been really divisive and persuaded people into really dark and divisive ways of thinking?
I think it did both. I'm quite glad that I can talk to pretty much anyone on campus about anything political and they'll have an opinion. I'm ecstatic with the fact that they'll have an opinion. Whether their opinion be rational or guided by TikTok, it's a little bit more up for debate. But the fact that they have an opinion, I think, is a good thing. I mean, I'm getting a little bit more concerned nowadays that students and young people are becoming completely apathetic. It's quite a concern, the fact that a good chunk of students, they just don't vote. They never have, and they have no intention of ever voting. Which is quite a sad statement. Although you will have a very, very strong half that will be very, very partisan, very, very, I'm voting this party because every other party is evil, which I do find also problematic. I don't necessarily think that the people that endorse Labour are evil, nor do I hope that people who endorse Labour think that the Tories are evil. I think that I'm of the firm belief that we just have different views on how to get to the same goal of a better country. Um, and I genuinely hope that the other groups feel the same. It's sad though, because I don't think a lot of them do. I do think a lot of them have become the rest of them are evil, and I think our politics is becoming starkly more American. Of it's this or the end of the world. Well, it's not quite the truth.
It is very worrying that I agree with you. I think a lot of people who vote certain ways think the other side's just wrong and that's it. But a lot of people just think the other side's just evil. And
Mm,
I've heard people say, I can't understand why people would vote this way unless they were truly evil. And I just think, well, why don't you just ask someone who's voted that way?
yeah.
And it's astonishing that they don't, and they don't seek out people to have conversations. I'm not even sure if they've probably come up to your stall and said, hey, Kris, what was your thoughts on Brexit or these things? I can't really
Mm,
understand why you'd think like that. Can you explain it to me? Because even if they don't want to hear it, or they know they're not going to be persuaded, surely it is of use to them and their political viewpoints and arguments to know how you think and where that comes
absolutely.
from.
Yeah.
I find that there's just such a gap there. It's just they're evil, I don't engage, I'll do my best to destroy them and shut them down, and that's the end of it. And
Mm,
that's just not going to get anyone anywhere.
no.
I wondered if you knew what the sort of top political issues that students are really talking about and concerned about today. Is it jobs really? Is it what am I going to do when I graduate?
It really depends the demographic of students. Students that are already engaged in politics, a lot of them are quite big into foreign policy, which I find fascinating. I find buzzing when I go to the student pubs about the Iran conflict, and I decided to poke my head in when the was it the night of the Jew? Is it going to be a ceasefire or hell raining on Iran? And it was fascinating to hear all the people buzzing about it. Um, Although when you talk to I'm going to say the term normal students, students that aren't necessarily hell bent on politics like myself, you'll talk to normal students and it's jobs. Um,
Hmm.
there has been a mass exodus on jobs, especially graduate jobs. We are one of the most overqualified populations in the world because there are just no up there jobs, but we have a load of graduates. What a big thing that I'm quite concerned about is there are five or six degrees that I think are worth it, and the rest of them just aren't. Um, Admittedly, I do half of my degree is one of those worthless degrees. I do philosophy. Um, it's a lot of these degrees are just Mickey Mouse, which is quite sad because I like a lot of these degrees. I think they're very very cool. English literature is fascinating. You know, it's the cultural relevance of Britain, and it is subsequently worthless because there's been a mass exodus of jobs.
I think it's 138 graduates for every job, which is an astonishing figure. And I did an English degree, and I'm very much of the view that you can go to university for whatever reason. And if it's to study for the love of study of that degree, that's absolutely fine. You know, I knew I wasn't going to become a millionaire studying an English degree, but I do know that when I graduated, it was a lot easier to get jobs than your generation. And some of that will be because of AI and technological advances, but it is also because of the Labour policies that they've brought in. Between 2010 and 2024, youth unemployment halved under the Conservatives. And I don't think enough students probably know about that and the policies that boosted those jobs, which gave them the leg up to get into the world of work and do what they wanted to do rather than either feel like they're on the scrap heap or just forever waiting to get the role that they want. And so I'm sure they are amongst the discussions that you have with the students on your stall.
Absolutely. One thing that we do need to keep in mind when I'm talking to these sort of students is a lot of them, obviously the first years at the moment, they weren't old enough to vote, but I was old enough to vote by 4 days. So a lot of people who are older than me, this was one of their first or second general elections that they voted in. And there was an enormous movement, especially among young people, of just get the Tories out. Vote for anything will get the Tories out. And a lot of people are still in that mindset of the incumbent party is the evil party, the bad party, the wrong party, the party taking the country in the wrong direction. So a lot of them, yes, I mean, they might be agreeing with the Conservatives 100% on policy. They won't vote for the Conservatives because of that stigma of just get the Tories out. We're seeing, thankfully, quite a stark shift in who students are voting for. They're no longer voting Labour. They're voting Green or Conservative, which is really quite strange. We've got one of the fastest growing societies on campus. We have got the most active society on campus, which it's an honour and a privilege for me to be saying. I'm very, very glad that I'm seeing students getting engaged in right-wing politics, but I'll be happy just to see them getting engaged in politics. The Greens and the Conservatives did a joint social. It went horribly wrong, and we probably wouldn't do it again, but at least we did a
What
joint
happened,
social.
Kris?
Well, we brought, I think it was 7 or 8 of ours, and the Greens, none of them were university students.
Oh,
So we just looked at them and we're going, so I thought we were doing a university student social. Why are none of you
who were
students?
they? Were they 50-year-old men?
Some of them was, yeah. One of them was I can't remember his name, but he was Sharpie. There's a video circling around of him yelling at Nigel Farage at one of his conferences in Swindon. Is it son of a teacher, son of a bricklayer? I think it was. But it's people like that, people who aren't students, who have graduated, postgraduates, that they use this as an excuse to go in and try and recruit students instead of trying to talk to the opposition. And the minute I showed up, they started using not very nice language that I won't repeat online. But
Oh no, Kris, I'm sorry.
it's yeah, at this point, let's be honest. If you're a conservative, you're kind of used to it by now.
I
Um,
know, but it shouldn't have to be because
no.
whatever political persuasion anyone is, they're still a human being and should be treated with basic respect. And people shouldn't make assumptions just based on a particular rosette that you might have on.
No,
By all
I agree.
means disagree, but name calling, I mean that's what you say for the playground, really. That's not what adults should be
Yeah,
doing.
especially adults who have been adults for as long as they have. One of the first things was, how does it feel to be part of the anti-abortion party, which was just wrong. I don't know where the hell they got that one from,
What a thing to
but
say.
they're strange people. I get on with a lot of the Greens, but the activists that were there, they were just so deeply unpleasant, which was an enormous shame. Because
But were you able to explain to them about how Boris Johnson stood up a few years ago and said a woman's rights to choose is safe under the Conservatives, and the issue is about extending abortion right up to the day before someone might give birth, and how dangerous that is for women, and all sorts of other moral issues as well. And what we had before worked.
Yeah, we all just looked at him like he had three heads, because that was just such a strange thing to say. I mean, I was completely caught off guard. I had no expectation of debating abortion. Abortion is, I mean, I'm not a biologist. I'm not a doctor. I study philosophy and politics. I have no understanding on this works. I refer to the experts. I wasn't prepared to debate abortion with a green activist. So I just looked at him like he was a nutcase.
But you were there for a pub crawl, weren't you?
We were there for a pub crawl. We ended up having to leave them and do our own because they ended up
Oh
being so
gosh.
displeasant, which was an enormous shame. But we had fun in the end.
Good. I'm glad you did. That's the most important as a student. And what are you focusing on right now at the moment, Kris? Are you still doing these stalls? Are you revising for exams?
What I should be doing, what I'm actually doing, are two very different things. What I should be doing is revising for exams, but I'm not. So I've been helping with the campaigning in Reading Central for the local elections. Um, and I am trying to help create a leaflet for the three student wards, which is Park Ward, Redlands Ward, and Catesgrove. And we're trying. The intention is to try and get students out, just because these places haven't been leafleted by the Conservatives for ages, and it looks like we don't even care about them anymore. So the main problem was because of manpower, but to these people who have no idea, no understanding of the manpower necessary, they look like they look at us like we don't care anymore. So I've been talking to the chairman in Reading Central for the last few days, and we are going to make a leaflet, and we are going to try and distribute this leaflet to as many houses as possible. I would like to hit at least all of Park and all of Redlands um,
Well
by
done.
the end of the academic year. Um, I'll continue doing it after the local elections because it's not necessarily for the local elections. It's so people know that we care, because that's a big problem. Is people don't think we care, but we do.
Well,
And
yes,
that's something.
people on doorsteps always say, I'm quite happy to vote for whoever on a local level, as long as they're active, as long as they show that they're engaging, they're listening to me, and they're actually fixing local problems. I'm not actually too concerned which political party they're from. So it is totally showing that you are active, you are engaging, and you do want to help people solve the problems that they have locally.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. I've had the privilege of knocking on doors, not just in Reading, but in Windsor, in Surrey, in parts of Wokingham, and the reception that you get is, well, I don't really like your party, but I mean, I'll probably vote for you guys if you prove that you're active. Um, which, I can't really fault the logic. If you really like if you really like Labour, but Labour never shows up, why would I ever vote Labour? Um,
Well, people want doers, and I think
hmm,
for a lot of people, they want things to get sorted and done and not just left. And so we certainly need more doers, and it sounds like you're one, Kris. So good for you for being so active. And now I've got a killer question for you, which I think you'll enjoy, which is, if you were Prime Minister, what would you change about the UK and why?
it's a killer question. It's the million pound question, isn't it? It's probably going to be, because we talked about it very briefly earlier on, about how schools are just a bit questionable. Um, Schools haven't changed for all intents and purposes in the last 150, 200 years. They are one of the only things that just haven't changed at all. The amount of money we have has changed, healthcare has changed, travel has changed, Everything has changed except schools. We're sticking 30 people in a room for an entire day, and we're teaching them maths and biology and English, which is all well and good. But students don't understand tax codes, but they remember the quadratic formula. They don't understand how to retire very, very comfortably, but they remember that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. They don't remember, they don't know, they have no idea how how politics works. They have no idea how to vote, how to register, what goes on in politics, why certain politicians can't actually deliver something that they really want to do. They're not just necessarily lying, but they're actually massive robots that they have to go through. Instead, we're teaching them E equals MC squared. Don't get me wrong, both are very, very important, but one is very, very important to people who want to go into a certain sphere, and one of them is very, very important to everyone. I'm a enormous advocate on teaching financial literacy, in teaching civics. I quite like how the Americans teach their civics. I'd probably make it British, obviously.
When you
But
talk about civics, is that sort of civic service and how
civics, as
you can
in
serve yourself?
how does politics work?
Oh,
How
I
it
see.
operates. I mean, I talk to a lot of people and they go, oh, I'm really interested in politics. And I go, well, why? What's interesting you? And they go, well, I mean, is it foreign policy, this, that, and the other? And I go, okay, how many seats are there in Parliament? And they go, oh, I don't actually know. How's the House of Lords work? Oh, I don't actually know. Oh, how does the Royal Assent work? I don't actually know. What does the king do? I don't actually know. These are quite worrying questions that people don't actually know the answer to. And hands up, I didn't know the answer to until relatively recently. These should be some of the first things taught in school. It shouldn't be, you know, it shouldn't be high level maths. Shouldn't be high level biology or chemistry or physics. I mean, I got an A in chemistry. I was quite good at it, but this isn't me trying to be vindictive if I wasn't good at science and maths. This is me saying there are priorities, and our priorities are trying to teach young people how the world works. And quite honestly, we fail quite dramatically on that. The amount of times
There's
I'd be
such a
talking to
gap,
people.
isn't there?
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't take long just to teach sort of the values of the separate political parties in a school class. It wouldn't take long just to explain basic economics, including personal finance, if it's mortgages, pensions, investing, all of that, and use real world examples of this is why rent controls don't work and backfire and cause all sorts of shortages. Here's an example from New York City, here's an example from Berlin, and have a debate about it. And it is just hugely worrying. I think it's only recently I've become really hyper aware with everything that's going on in the world, geopolitical issues, how much we're just not taught about the history of the world, the history of China, the history of the Middle East. It's very much Britain, Western Europe, First, Second World War, the Tudors, and that's pretty much it. Maybe a bit about America. And there's so much more to the world and history than that. And we're still living
Absolutely.
with it.
A lot of people aren't even taught basic British history, let alone anything, actually really quite. This is the foundation of how the world's structured. I mean, yes, we're taught about Henry VIII and the Tudors, but how many people remember Agincourt or the occupation of Wales, or how Great Britain became Great Britain instead of England, Wales, Scotland, and Ireland? What happened? What changed? And a lot of people don't actually know. A lot of people don't understand. A lot of people don't understand the gravity of it. Was it my brother's a huge history buff, and subsequently it ends up rubbing off on me. But people aren't taught it, and it's become quite a concern when you talk to people just off the cuff and say, "Oh, it's like the North in 1066 when we were fighting off the Norwegians," and they go, "What? I have no idea what you mean."
Thank you so much, Kris Lund, for joining me on the Berkshire Heroes podcast. Best of luck for your stall, for your studies as well, and all your future endeavours. It's been brilliant to speak with you.
Thank you, Laura. It's been a pleasure.
And please remember to subscribe to the Berkshire Heroes channel.